We just discussed the benefits of Ayurveda. How can Ayurveda help you boost your immunity? From Ayurveda, let's shift our focus to masks. What mask should we use? Should we wear N95? Should a normal surgical ply mask do? Should we continue wearing cloth mask? We all know we need to wear masks. Should we wear double masks? Should we wear one mask? Some of us not wearing masks at all. What are the risks involved? To discuss all of this and more, I have Professor Anil Arora. He is the head of gastroenterology from the Gangaram Hospital. Thank you, sir, once again for joining us on NewsX. My very first question to you, sir. A lot of confusion regarding masks. We had done one public awareness program, especially focusing on the importance of N95 masks. Help the viewers understand the difference between these masks and which mask is the best, sir.
You see, there are three. Thank you, Meenakshi, for having me on your show. First of all, we should understand any mask is far superior than no mask. Here is an epidemic of COVID-19 infection, which by default is a respiratory tract infection. That means it spreads through the contaminated air containing aerosols, which are having particles of the virus suspended onto the particulate material, which is floating around in the air. So any mask is certainly much better than no mask at all. And there are two types of masks which we need to be using. One is a source mask and second is a protective mask. Out of the two, it is very important that the source mask has to be a mask. That means the person who is suffering from COVID-19 infection, if he uses a mask, obviously is not going to throw out the contaminated secretions from his oropharynx, from his lungs, out into the circulation. So that is the biggest source of contamination of the air. Second is the person who is in contact with him. Depending upon the proximity from the infected person, how close you are, how loudly that person is talking, how deeply that person is breathing, how much is he sneezing. Any active breathing, any forceful sneezing, or loud talking will lead to expulsion of large amount of the particles containing infected virions, sitting and floating around the small particles and suspended in the air. The closer you are in contact with the person who is suffering from COVID-19 infection, the lesser protection you have, the more chances are you will be incidentally, unknowingly, unwillingly and try to inhale the contaminated air. Since the virus enters only through the upper respiratory tract and through the bronchus into the lung, so that is the first and foremost. So the person who is infected needs to be protected. It's extremely important. All patients with COVID should have a mask so that they do not end up infecting others. That is the first thing. Regarding your own safety, there are three important, measures you have to take. You have to maintain a social distance, because there is a very good science which tells you the farther you are away from the infected contact, the lesser are the chances that this infection will be able to travel you. In fact, there have been scientific studies done under experimental condition which have shown that beyond 3 meters, the chance of virus remaining active and still hanging on to the small particles and still able to go into your lungs is extremely low. So for all purposes, a 3-meter distance. If you remember the typical slogan by the Indian politician, ki 2 gaz ki duri bana ke rakhna, that has a lot of meaning. You see, 2 to 3 yards will have, 3-meter distance is good enough to be maintained. But practically, it's not always possible, especially if you are sitting at home. If one of your own attendant on your own sibling, parent, mother, father, children are suffering, by default, you will have a limited space in the room. If there are 4 members, you just cannot theoretically have a distance of about 3 meters. So to protect that, to overcome that, you have to use masks. There are 3 types of masks. One is the cloth mask, which is manufactured at home. It is easily available. It is very cheap. You can wash it. You can reuse it. Then you have a surgical mask, which has multiple layers. It has a multiple layers of fabrics. And, its protective efficacy is much better than a closed mask. And then finally, you have something called N95 mask. The reason it is called N95 is because this is a type of mask which is called FFP mask. That means it is a filtering faceplate mask.
So there sir, out of these masks, which one is the most effective? Which one will you recommend that the people use?
Yes, you see, I was talking about 3 types of masks: cloth mask, then the surgical mask, and then this is a new concept called FFP, which is a filtering faceplate mask.
Mhm.
FFP mask is the best mask. There are two varieties of this. One is called N95. I'm sure you would have heard this commonly used colloquial language of N95 mask. N95 mask means it should be able to filter in 95% of the incoming viral particles. Then you have a 97 N97 mask, which means the pore size is such that it should be able to block the entry of 97% of the incoming viral particles. So theoretically, the lesser the size of the pore of the mask, the more protection it will give you. So N95 is the best mask if you have to use anywhere between the two. But the problem is it is costlier than the surgical, and the cloth-based mask may not be easily available. And then it is not you cannot wash it. You just cannot dry it. It has to be put in a dryer, or you have to leave it unused for some time. So if you want the best masks are N95. One is the quality of the mask because of the degree of the porosity it has, and second is the way you use it. If you look at the media report, the way people use it, they just use it hanging on to their chins or just being pushed up to the nose by default, because the air has to enter either through your nostrils or through your mouth. So every mask has to be tightly fitted across your nose as well as your chin so that your mouth is covered. You see, whatever data of protective efficacy of the mask which has been published in the literature, this is done in the experimental condition in which you presume that you have a high quality N95 mask which is tightly fitting around your nostrils and the mouth. But that does not happen in the real practice. That is the reason, in spite of masking, you see the scourge of the patients we have. Now, India has reported 3.31 lakh cases today.
Right. So that's exactly what we were going to talk about, sir. It's not just the best mask you need to wear, it's also the way you wear the mask, which is very, very important. There is another query, sir, which we're getting a lot through social media. A lot of people say, can I skip the mask because I feel claustrophobic? And can I just wear a shield? What will you say to those people, sir?
You see, I think Meenakshi is a very good and relevant question. Shield in the absence of the mask is absolutely useless. There's no meaning. So shield may give you additional protection over and above the mask. Shield alone will not give you. So it is just hanging around. You have all the areas around the shield to let the air come in and out at its own will and at its own choice and pace. You have no control on that. So if you think you're just wearing a shield, that is, you're fooling yourself. If you're using mask and shield, that will give you better protection than either of the two alone. But then if you're feeling claustrophobic, the only way you can skip the mask is if you are sitting alone in a ventilated region, which is facing the, say, park, a veranda or a garden in which there is a clear flow of the air coming from one side, getting out on the other side, there is nobody in your vicinity. So
Yes.
you see, if majority of the patient of COVID-19, especially the Omicron variety, are either pre-symptomatic or oligosymptomatic or asymptomatic. So how do you know who's carrying the virus?
Absolutely, and that's why
That
when
is
you
the
go
biggest
to
problem.
that's why when you go to crowded areas or when you step out of your house, it's absolutely mandatory to wear a mask. So my last question, since we were talking about N95 masks, you had talked about it a little bit. If you could elaborate further, sir, as you sign off, really, why is N95 mask so very important? You spoke about how it does not allow the virus really to penetrate through. Help the people understand as a public service message about the shield of protection which a single N95 mask can give you, because the health minister himself said, sir, as I close, that mask is a vaccine in your pocket.
Absolutely. In fact, I agree with you, Meenakshi, completely. You have hit the nail on the head. If you see, poor man's vaccine is the mask. Not only it will prevent you from having COVID, but if you look at the developing country like India, tuberculosis is rampant. It is increasing in view of immunosuppression being given for COVID patients. So it is a prelude to preventing you from so many other infections. I think this is high time we learn from Japan, from the eastern countries like Korea and South Korea and Japan, and Taiwan, in which there is a regular tendency to wear the mask in metros. It is a routine habit. I went to Japan 10 years back. Most of the people were wearing masks when there was no sign and trace of COVID. So that is a good culture. You prevent so many infection when you come in contact with the community. You do not know who is carrying tuberculosis, who is carrying transmissible viral infection. Coming back to your basic question of the types of the mask, between the surgical mask, cloth mask, and the N95, it is a degree of closeness of the pores. Surgical mask is loosely fitted fibers and the fibrils of the cotton, which will just give you broad protection. The degree of protection afforded is only from the source, because it will be able to prevent, say, only 50% of the incoming virus. Whereas in surgical mask, that protection goes to around about 80-85%. Whereas if you want a mask which is of N95 variety, that means 95% of the incoming mask within 3 meters can be prevented, because the size of the pores is less. It is designed in such a way, it stands to the European standards for occupational safety. And that is the reason this N95 mask, which is well fitted, gives you the best protection, as good a protection as possibly the vaccination also, provided you wear it regularly, provided it is tightly worn and worn in the right appropriate manner as given by the manufacturer.
Absolutely, sir. So it isn't just really the science of wearing mask, it's also the art of wearing mask, a video which you had participated in, another discussion which you had shared with me. And that really was our public service broadcast. How you can increase your immunity via Ayurveda. We just discussed how masks can protect you against coronavirus. That was the focus of our next and the last segment. Prevention better than cure. All of us know that. How many of us are following it in practice? That is a question I leave you all with. For now, thank you, Dr. Arora, for joining us with your views on that big story.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.